Hello, this is Curt Pringle, and this is a new edition of our Talking Issues series. We're trying to do these podcasts to talk about public policy issues that impact people in Southern California, and particularly here in Orange County. And today, I thought it would really be good for you to hear from a friend of mine who really is the Renaissance man, someone who has a full understanding of so many issues, but also who's made such a huge impact in our community here, potentially in Anaheim, but then it goes beyond Orange County and Southern California as a whole. So I want to introduce my friend Bill Taormina.
Thank you, Curt.
Glad you're
Talk
here.
about an impact. What about you? I'm
Well,
sitting in a building that wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you.
Well, that's a good start. And
Yeah.
flattery, you can scatter throughout the discussion if
All
you'd
right,
like. That would be just fine. But really, about you, your family was in the trash and waste business, a business that today seems very glamorous, but maybe when your dad and grandfather started here in Southern California, it wasn't perceived as being that glamorous. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Thank you. Myself, personally, I'm one of four kids. And we had a trash business here for many, many years. My father, before him, my grandfather, was back in LA, and no one wanted to pick up trash. That was the lowest possible non-skilled job you could have. He was an Armenian immigrant. His name was Bill, Grandpa Bill. And he started working day by day to collect cardboard to resell, because it was after the war, so any salvage was worth more than, the garbage. The garbage you would feed to the pigs for food, and the recyclables then you would sell to earn money. So they really had routes to pick up the recyclables, and the garbage itself, the food products, would go to the farms. That's how the business started. In 1950, when my father met my mom, he was a commercial fisherman at Carmel and Monterey. He told my grandfather that I'm a fisherman and I have a place in Catalina and it's wonderful and you should really see it. And my grandfather said, "Bad idea. If you're going to marry my daughter, you got to have a real job. So here's a truck. I want you to go to Santa Ana and get a contract to pick up their trash because I think their truck broke down." Well, my grandfather was actually close, but not exactly right. Father got in the truck, drove down Los Angeles Street, which was the 5 freeway and all that was built. Ended up in Anaheim. You say, "Hey, I'm here because your truck broke down." City manager at the time said, "Sit down, kid." And that started after the meeting. Said, "I'm going to have you pick up a trash in our city and see how you do. So start here and go to the end of the street and pick up all the trash and come and see me when you're done." That was at 9 o'clock in the morning. Usually took an hour to pick up the trash. My father came back at 5 o'clock at night. The truck was overloaded to the sky. The city manager walked out and looked up there and said, "Where did you get all this trash? The city's only 3 blocks long." He said, "You said go to the end of the street." He ended up in what was then Knoll Ranch. That's how far he went on Lincoln. He said, "You're hired, kid." So that was it, 1950, when my father started picking up garbage in Anaheim.
Wow.
Yep.
So what evolution in industry, right? I mean, you've seen it, or at least
Yes.
you heard it from the stories of your dad, and then
Yes.
to the time that you and your brother took over the business, and what changed from those early days to you and your brother running
Right.
this big enterprise, which was
Sure.
primarily Anaheim disposal.
Right. Yeah. North Orange County.
Yes.
What changed was, well, first of all, regulation, because they used to we used to dump garbage at the corner of Vermont and State College, where that big jet airplane is in the park. That was a big pit, and they'd light it on fire at the daytime and put it out at night. So it would burn all day long, smoke everywhere. That was our dump. That's changed to, of course, burial, which is up in Brea Canyon, which is still working today. But one regulation on top of another. Recycling became something that was appropriate, not to fill up our landfills and waste. So that is just a long transition that had to do with extreme capital expenditures, more employees, and more formalized dealing with what was otherwise just people throwing it on the curb.
Right.
Yeah.
And now that industry is because of that regulation, but also it's one of those few industries really where individual cities
Yeah.
choose who is their operator, and they provide franchise rights, a restricted
Yes.
right for one operator, sometimes two or three, but primarily one operator to provide
Yes.
all that service.
Right.
And that's the kind of bond in that
It's the
industry
bond.
with the individual cities.
Indeed. So in our case, in Anaheim, which is still this case since 1950, the we've had a relationship with the city that's a partnership. That's a little bit different from most. Every pound of trash that passes through this town, the city earns a fee on that. And that's our partnership, because basically having the right to have all the collection, if you will, for the trash and the recyclables, that is something that is a virtual monopoly in a way, except the price is controlled by the city. So what can that hauler do to give back to the city on a business standpoint? And the answer is profits slash sales from recyclables and other things, franchise fees that they pay that come out of their top line to give the city the reason to keep that hauler. But in every one of those cases that we were involved in and still are, there's a 30-day cancellation. So if that hauler doesn't pay the money or doesn't do perfect service, that contract is canceled. So we were able to, and continue to, through our new partners, Republic Services, keep those contracts in force. But the key to it is customer service. Without that, you have, there's no reason for that hauler to be there.
Yeah, so it is interesting. I mean, through your life, certainly, because you grew up through that industry, and somewhat through mine, because I served in the legislature with a guy by the name of Byron Shear,
Yes,
who carried a bill which really required cities to be responsible for reducing what they took to the landfills and forcing recycling, really.
Yes.
I think it was SB 760 or something like that, if I remember, in the early 90s.
yes, sir.
It's getting to be a long time since
No,
those
you're
things
right
happened.
on.
But it really did start requiring cities to divert from the landfills all recyclable products.
Correct.
And that was kind of that start, I think a nationwide start.
It was.
Changing how we deal with our trash, and thus multiple trash cans out in front of our house.
Now we've got 3 or 4, some for organics, some for cardboard and recyclables, some for compostable garbage that goes to the dump. So we separated it, did the automation thing, started that in Anaheim in 1989, right after AB 939, which came after Scheer.
That's what it was. Okay.
But Scheer also had a bill, you were right. So that made it possible, but no one knew how to do it. So we took a chance, and we innovated these robotic collections that we see now everywhere. So when we first got that innovation, our banker said, "What are you thinking? How am I gonna ever loan you money on a truck that I can't sell to some other guy that can't pick up, deliveries? And this is a garbage truck with a robot arm. Who wants that?" So we basically had to put up our whole family assets to get the first loan to do that right in Anaheim. And if not for leadership like yourself and others that came after you, that would have never happened. So that whole innovation was a function that started right here in our city.
And now it's so common, nobody thinks it's special.
Correct.
We just have 2 or 3 barrels, and some people would even suggest 4, since
Indeed.
now the organic food waste is being talked about.
Correct.
So the evolution of picking up trash from your grandfather's day to your father and then to your family.
Yes.
And then when did you and your brother separate from the company?
We merged
to a certain extent. Yes.
Yeah, we got out of the day-to-day mode in the late 90s.
Yes.
And then we started doing acquisitions, and we were the development squad for Republic Services, and we built the company from 1 billion in sales to 13 billion in sales, about half of which is on the West Coast in the Western United States.
Right.
So that we were very busy doing that. And we still would be, still part of the company,
Right.
but we have a lesser role, and now it's more of a ombudsman and trying to help cities to, get compliance and things of this type.
Yeah, I guess people take all of this for granted. I mean, put my trash cans out. Where does it go? So where does it go?
Where does it go?
Yeah.
Well, there's many places it goes. There's the can that's the organics can is your yard waste, and anything that basically breaks down and turns into natural gas that would otherwise could be ground up and used for soil amendment. It could be used for fertilizer. So that's the organics. That's why that's so popular. That is just the newest law that just came, and we've already installed those second, or actually in this case, third cans in Anaheim for the organics. The regular, the black can is the stuff like baby diapers and coffee grounds that can't be used for any other thing. That goes to the landfill, that gets buried. And then the recyclables are anything you can think of that's not going to disintegrate. Cardboard, glass, plastic. There's probably 30 or 40 different varieties, all of which are separated from the waste stream at our automated facility out on La Palma and Blue Gum. So those separate cans go to separate picking lines, and they're separate from the landfill. That was the whole mission in 1989: get it out of the landfill, so A, we don't fill up our canyons, and B, we don't provide methane gas going into the air.
Right. So all those organics, and just the last couple of years, there has been a lot changed that basically said food waste
Yes.
can't be thrown into those black cans. It too creates methane gases that decomposes, and it needs to go into the green barrel.
Yep.
And even an apartment building or an office building or a
Yes.
restaurant needs to have those food waste cans.
And that's a challenge.
Right.
But it's the law. So it's like
Right.
seatbelts. Okay, that's the new law, and as of this date, this is what has to. So you see all these containers out there. People have to learn how to put the right thing in the right container. Basically, it's no longer waste. It is a resource, a natural resource that just happens to be in a can outside your curb. But it's no longer waste.
Right.
The waste is a very small portion. The goal was to get it down to 25% to the landfill and 75% to be reused, and we're almost there.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I remember when you approached me probably about 5 or 6 years ago with an idea that certain businesses could go to zero waste.
Yes.
That there are ways to even get to that level where there's no waste going to landfills.
There are. Big German company came here to the Orange County and the Los Angeles area with that specific goal, and it was very profound. They had done it in Germany. It worked here. They tried to do it here. They just couldn't get the user to cooperate. So the reality of the alley and the people throwing the stuff away and people going back and picking through the trash, and California is way different than Europe. I know you've been there. Many of your listeners have been to Europe. You notice that the alleys are tiny and the trash cans are small, and there's some places where you don't even see the trash because they literally recycle everything. We just can't get there yet, but we're on our way.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And there's economic incentives in a variety of ways. I mean, I know our company was working with a firm that wanted to put a anaerobic digester in Anaheim, which takes all of the green waste, the leaves and the food waste and such, and cooks it down so it creates methane gas, and then you have a byproduct that becomes fertilizers and things like that. But those things are hard to cite.
Very.
And everybody around that cited location would complain and think that it would be a bomb or a smelly thing. And those are the challenges. But those are some of the steps you have to take, addressing the public concerns, but also make sure we figure out ways to recycle everything.
Precisely.
So you believe there will be a time in which there'll be literally zero waste coming from an office building like this or from someone's house?
Absolutely, yes. There will be a time, I would say in the next 5 years. And that sounds like a short time frame, but based on the trend that we're seeing and the fact that we're at about 70% recyclable now, or 70% separation now, I think we can get to the rest of the 30%.
Yeah. I mean, some people will say, well, that interesting to know from this guy who's smart, talks about trash and waste and recycling and sustainability in this regard. But I really wanted everybody to hear from you, Bill, because I believe there's a few lines when you deal with people who have been economically successful through their business, and to see those people who use that success to multiply it into philanthropy, community engagement, and support. And you and I became friends and got to know each other when you were investing in Anaheim, not only in buying businesses or buildings, but also helping the city finance and buy buildings for some of the long-term benefit of our community. And so you using, the gift of resources that you have been able to generate over time into really investing in philanthropy and even focusing on one of the number one issues of our time, and that's homelessness here in Southern California. And you are so plugged into that as to how we can address homelessness, how we can get people off the streets, how we can support those people who find themselves in that situation. So what led you to focus in on that area of community engagement?
Thank you, Curt. 20 years ago, approximately, I heard you give a speech about when one's cup runneth over. And that speech brought tears to my eyes. You had tears in your eyes when you gave it. And it was my initial inspiration, saying if a person like this, who's a person of leadership like yourself, can make that the number one priority of why he's serving, then I should do the same thing with the stuff that's where my cup is running over. So to the extent that I made money or created income streams for myself, I said, take that and put it back in, and the more you give, the more you get. So it's a virtually recycling, but building up from there. So that was the initial thought. And because, why am I in this position? What caused me to have this opportunity? Well, certainly it wasn't from myself. It was from the man above. And that's why I feel in my heart of hearts that that's what is my mission, to put as much as I can possibly back in. Did a lot of real estate deals and fixed up a lot of neighborhoods and all that, but that's brick and mortar. The more important part, your question is, why am I focused on homelessness? Because I see that as a problem that only can be solved with a public-private partnership. I've seen government try to fix it. They've done okay, but you got your Salvation Army, the private sector, working together with folks like myself and Dan Young and the Samuelis. These people are on fire to put back into the community what they've, if you will, taken. So they put back more than they take. And what happens is it just continues to improve. And there's some great plans I'm sure you'll ask about.
Yeah, no, it really is good. I mean, because right where we're sitting here at the corner of State College in Catella, just 2 blocks over there on the other side of Angel Stadium is the riverbed, which, is just a few short years ago where you had thousands of people living along the riverbed, coming and going in a homeless state.
Right.
And it really took an impetus, and a lot of people criticize different points of impetus or engagement or push. Usually we don't like to be pushed from the status quo by someone else, but because of lawsuits and such, I know Judge David Carter, who I think I've known for over 30 years in Orange County, he got a case, and he put a lot of pressure on cities to get moving, to figure out what those steps are.
Yes.
And I know you have been engaged with Judge Carter to be somewhat the community eyes on some of these programs and how to get them moving. So
Right.
Tell me how that got started.
Sure. I was on the riverbed in a golf cart with taking a handicapped person for a tour, an elected official that was handicapped. I was driving the golf cart, and Judge Carter was leading a posse of people, maybe 30, 40 people in front of us. And suddenly he stopped, and all the people stopped. I put on the brakes. He comes walking right through the middle of the crowd, comes right up to the golf cart, and says, I want you in my office tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. I said, is there handcuffs involved? Of course, he started laughing. He said, no. He said, Todd Spitzer up here was telling me that you're doing some stuff, and we want to hear about this private sector thing. So anyway, I went there the next day, and this man is like you, an inspiration, just hanging out, just sitting with this man in his office and seeing his background and what he thinks. He takes practical application of things that most people take advantage of and puts them down to reality. He says, we can solve this. I was in Marine Corps. I was in Vietnam. We could solve this. All we got to do is apply ourselves. So I said, I have these resources. We have these people. And we got together. Salvation Army came in, and that's when this whole transition started to happen. He lit that fuse.
So I know you were involved. Anaheim and Fullerton worked on a emergency homeless shelter. I think that was the first one in Anaheim on Kaiser Way.
Right.
And then I believe you were able to secure property and create another emergency shelter in the city. And Harry Sadu, when he became mayor, created an emergency shelter within a short few days.
Yep.
And then the Salvation Army stepped up.
Yes.
So tell me your involvement in the creation of those emergency shelters, which really is the first step. Get people off the street, get them out of parks, and provide some level of care. So hopefully they'll see there is a better future for them.
My answer to that is one word. I serve as a catalyst. A catalyst. Government regulation, building departments, nonprofit organizations that have great hearts that want to do the work, and a whole bunch of volunteers. Putting those folks all together, going to the building official and say, can you put a resident inspector here on this emergency shelter that we're going to build in 2 weeks because we need this and that. And folks like Rudy from the city of Anaheim and a litany of people from building and planning for the one you spoke of on State College.
Right.
We built in 24 days the shelter for 200 people, and it worked because we were working together. So my job, my role there was being a catalyst.
Yeah.
Same with Santa Ana, with Carnegie Shelter that's being built there. with the Salvation Army, working with Nissen and Ben Hurst. Those folks, as far as I'm concerned, are angels. The power that they
The
have.
leadership of the Orange County Salvation Army.
Yes, amazing. And right, again, 2 blocks from here, you just happen to be in the epicenter
Right.
of most homelessness is right here by the stadium. On Lewis Street, they're building the Center for Hope, which is going to be an incredible project. And you had that interview, folks. Watch the interview that Nissen gave you.
Right.
And so all I want to do is just join with them and be a catalyst. And they say, oh, we can't get to this certain individual. Maybe I've known that city person or that county person since they were an intern. Go have a meeting. That's my role.
Yeah, and you hit on a topic that is really important to me, and that is that every individual can make a difference, right? And we all have different passions and where we want to be engaged and where we find ourselves in the relationship we can bring together.
Yes.
That one individual getting involved in kind of unlocking the doors or breaking down the barriers that they have the tools to address.
Yes.
And you did in terms of relationships, certainly here in Anaheim, certainly here in this community, and touching base with, the catalyst of Judge Carter. And then what his focus was cities had to have a place as an emergency shelter before they could enforce certain non-camping ordinances and restrict people from sleeping on the street. So Anaheim was quick in building shelters and therefore able to start enforcing some of those laws. And other cities are still trying to complete that process. But that was somewhat the very first process in addressing the homeless on the street.
Right.
And then the next step is how do you help those that want help in rehabilitation and drug and alcohol and mental illness. And there's many of the folks that you've been involved with who are involved in that as well.
In big time. Anaheim really set the precedent for everybody around this region to follow. Basically, everybody south of Los Angeles, Anaheim has set that precedent. San Diego tried and somewhat did it. Anaheim succeeded. Yes, there's still a few sprinklings of homeless individuals here, but we have the capacity. We have the ability to enforce non-camping ordinances. The Judge Carter factor also came into play with Los Angeles, which is the next and biggest Mount Everest we hope to climb.
Right.
And,
so how many total people are homeless in Los Angeles?
Over 40,000.
Yeah, I mean,
think about
it really is. And I mean, the question is that the city of Los Angeles County, is that how do you count 40,000 people? I mean, they do, these night counts and census counts on how many people are homeless on the streets, but how can you ever really count 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 people? And I think that's the battle that the county of LA has, just as our neighbor.
So to that point, for my point of view, it just should be zero. We shouldn't have anybody on any street sleeping in a sleeping bag or under a cardboard box. It's just not right, not in this country. But those folks that are there, from a drug addiction standpoint, from God knows what happened in their life, are so far in a hole that their lives are completely broken. They need to be rebuilt. And so if we can reach down in that hole, pick them up by their bootstraps, set them on stable ground, if you will, treat them for mental illness, treat them for drug addiction, treat them for physical ailments. And they all, if you or I lived on the street for 1 hour,
right,
we couldn't even walk home. But these folks are living out there every day. If we can do that, that's what our function is for what we call the Life Rebuilding Center, which is our big plan.
Yes. So let's talk about that.
Sure.
First off, your point is right on. I mean, my daughter's involved with the Salvation Army and helping them and many of their efforts.
Yes.
And she will say that if you are on the street looking for food, trying to feed yourself over a few day period, it begins to have a dramatic impact on your mental health and your mental stability. And it's just being in that, it's not necessarily starting out with mental impacts, but just the life on the street and struggling for a place to stay warm and live, let alone eat.
Sure.
Is a huge contributor to people's mental instability as homeless. So you have taken this awareness and engagement in Orange County, Anaheim, and beyond. It really is fantastic to think, and almost way too daunting to consider. That you're looking at partnering with some property owners, some very generous, fantastic people in Los Angeles, to build the largest emergency shelter, recuperative care facility, permanent supportive housing community anywhere in the country in downtown Los Angeles. Tell us what that project would look like.
Thank you. The Shomoff family, Isaac Shomoff, came to America 40 years ago with nothing. And he's now a multi-millionaire, billionaire that owns hundreds and thousands of units. And he owns the Sears property, which is the Sears Tower, which is at the corner of Olympic and Soto, right at the 5 and the 10 freeway. You see this big tower that says Sears on the top.
Which used to be when we got the Sears and Roebuck catalog
Yes.
at home, and you folded over the corners of the pages to tell your mom what you wanted for Christmas.
That's right.
That's where I was told where all the catalog goods were stored before they were delivered out to stores or to people's houses.
They were. And it's fabulous to walk through the building and you see where they used to keep the bicycles and the ramp that they used to slide things down into the trucks. It's fabulous.
Right, and it's 10 stories.
10 stories, 1.6 million square feet. 1.6 million square feet. That is, 100 times bigger than Anaheim City Hall. I mean, you can't even imagine the size. On 26 acres. Think of 26 acres in the middle of anywhere. This is in the middle of downtown LA. All industrial. Perfect site. The Shomoff family has said, take our property, put it into the deal. And how did we meet? Judge Carter, through an attorney, indirectly, we were introduced. And there's again his magic. Then when we talked together with Isaac, who came from nothing, who was homeless before he got to America, he said, I want to give back. I'm going to help people live. I cannot see people dying in the street, in front of his buildings, but anywhere else. So our relationship was immediate and as if we were brothers from a different mother, from the same mother. It was amazing. So bottom line is, we've been meeting with the city now for almost 3 years to get through their bureaucratic maze, and we're getting closer. We have a new mayor, and I guess that's probably another question you have.
Yeah, no, it is the number one issue that the two candidates for mayor in the last election focused on, said that was the number one issue.
Yes.
And the mayor, once she was elected, Karen Bass, former member of the state assembly, former speaker of the state assembly, former member of Congress, she said, I'm going to declare a state of emergency, which is certainly the case. I mean, the state of emergency could have been declared a long time before that.
Yes.
But in fact, now a very strong focus. But how do you get, I mean, if you look at this Judge Carter model where you need to have a bed available for every person on the street, how do you have 40,000 beds available? So the Sears Center, it's called a Life
Rebuilding Center.
A rebuilding center.
Yes.
That could house as many as 10,000 people.
Or more. I mean, it's almost unlimited.
Right.
But our mission there is to give people dignity.
Right.
Give them a space about the size of your office that we're in here, about 16 by 16, with a bed and storage and a table and a place where they can feel like they're at home, even for the emergency mode. And once they graduate from that 6-month program of completely rebuilding their life, as mentioned, under one roof, every possible service, they literally walk across the street into a permanent housing so that we have affordable housing built all around it. So the answer to how it gets done and the scale, the problem is so big that we need big answers. This is just one of what should be 10 facilities like it. General Hospital in LA, same idea. That'll be a 5-year program because it's all government and nothing against the government. This one is private. It cuts the cost per day by 50%. And I get frustrated sometimes trying to convince the politicians, and they say, these numbers are too good to be true. It's because they've been looking at 100 beds. We're talking about thousands of beds. So no wonder the overhead is reduced and the cost per day is less, hence efficiency.
Right. And the efficiency that business people can bring to it, with all due respect to those friends of mine in government, there's many other challenges when it's a government-run program or private program, or when you are finding 20 or 30 or 100 beds for a shelter, and in fact you can look bigger and contemplate a few thousand, if not 10,000 beds in a shelter.
You could. So we start with 2,500, we build up to 5,000, and we stay there and stabilize. We already have the $500 million ready to go. This is a $200 million improvement project. $300 million of total, together, if you put half $500 million of total commitment. Banks are waiting in line to loan the money. Salvation Army waiting in line to be the operator. We have everything we need, construction, all of it. But all we got to do is have a politician who has the pen say, go, and you'll see something happen that'll change the world.
Well, that's very exciting, and it's from somebody who comes from humble means and their family and humble business operation, to be able to magnify that success into philanthropy to help hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And Bill, you're a fantastic example in all of that. And I want to thank you for spending time and sharing that. And if anybody wants to learn more about the Life Rebuilding Center that Bill Taormina mentioned in Los Angeles, they can certainly drop me a note here, and I'm sure there'll be an email at the bottom that you can contact us. But more importantly, I want to thank you, Bill, for being here and sharing your story.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all you've done for our world, our city, our region. Your service in government is unmatched. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.